Well, I
you're a
am kind of
Christian?
a laggard. I think if the guy had said you Christians are laggards, I'd have no argument. But yeah, we get those every now and then, those kind of things. Again, 888-318-7884 is the number. Okay, so Jimmy, since you brought that up,
Okay.
could you like name a teaching that Catholics share with other Christians? Like there's some like
Jesus is the Messiah. That's kind of a big one.
what? We all share that?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Okay. So that's a lot to have in common, actually.
Yeah, it
with
is.
another person. I wanted to say something else to you today.
Oh, okay.
I drove by the airport to come here.
Right.
This airport over here,
Yeah.
which is called
Gillespie Field.
Gillespie Field instead of not the big one. And there are all these private jets out there. Like I've never seen. They're all lined up, private jets. And then you know what I thought?
What?
Comic-Con.
Oh,
Do you think that's what it is?
Good
Comic-
point. Probably so.
So Comic-Con is a big thing. You probably know about it. It happens here in San Diego, and roughly 20 to 30 million people come, and that's a rough number. I'm just throwing that out.
It's not quite that many,
Oh,
but it
okay.
is a lot.
But it's a lot of fun, but it's also very crowded.
It
So
is very crowded. That's
you-
why I don't go anymore.
Oh, you have been there
Oh,
before.
yeah, numerous times, but I don't go anymore because it's just too hectic.
But then I was thinking when I saw all those private jets over there, maybe it's like the movie stars fly over over there.
sure.
You know, because they fly
Yeah.
all these movie stars down from what's that movie star place? Hollywood.
I was going to say,
I know.
L.A.
And they have a place where they keep the movie stars. I just couldn't remember the name of the location they keep them in.
No, and it makes a big impact whenever Comic-Con happens. It makes a
Yeah.
big impact locally. Like, people will know I'm very active in the local dance world. I call, right now I'm calling regularly for 5 different groups. But 2 of them are not meeting this week because of Comic-Con. Because
It's just too much. It just
Yeah.
takes up too much of the city, and yeah, it's hard to get places when it's going on. And I want to go to calls because there's lots of calls
Yeah,
coming in.
let's.
But I have a dance question I want to
Okay.
ask you. When my wife and I both went to we went to fourth grade together here in California.
Uh-huh.
And when you're a California school child, every school child in California at some point learns what is called and it has another name in Spanish, but it's called the Mexican hat dance.
Okay.
Okay, so you grew up not in California.
No.
Did you learn the Mexican hat dance, or is that just California kids?
We didn't. My only exposure to the Mexican hat dance is like I've seen it in cartoons. I think it's in some Bugs Bunny cartoons or something.
Right.
We learned other things in. Every place learns local culture, local history things. Now today it's so politically correct. This doesn't happen necessarily this way.
No.
But when I was growing up, I was in the South, and so we learned Civil War songs. And
Yeah.
and we
right.
learned Southern Civil
We
War
never
songs.
did. No.
Yeah.
It's all California missions and Mexican hat dance and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
here.
we didn't have California missions in Arkansas.
Oh, that was good because that would be really hard to get to them.
Yeah. We also did square dancing in school. We had that as part of our PE class one year, which was my first exposure to it. And I really enjoyed it and remembered it as an adult. And there are also square dance and other dance programs out here in California. In fact, there's a local middle school that last couple of years they've hired me to come in and call a series of square dances for their students, and they've got 160 kids on the floor at once. It's a lot of fun.
That is a lot of fun. I have to say I really liked in second grade or first grade doing the Mexican hat dance. I think one year there was some enterprising teacher that did square dance and it was a lot of fun. All right, ready to go to calls then.
Okay.
It's open forum. We welcome your calls and please be assured that there's no preferential position given to Catholics. If you're non-Catholic, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. And we start with Daro in Tampa, Florida, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Daro, thank you for downloading the app onto your phone. Your question for Jimmy.
Hey, good evening, guys. First, what you guys were talking about, the Mexican hat dance. I did the Mexican hat dance in elementary school, but oddly enough, my Mexican parents never saw that as part of their culture, so it's a little hilarious.
Could be like Taco Bell, it's the
Not really
the
Mexican.
Mexican food that's not really Mexican food.
But there is a Mexican dance called the jarabe that's the same music. You familiar with that?
No, I'm not actually.
Oh.
So there's a bunch of stuff. That's I don't know, I guess, about my own culture. But to my question, I wanted to know the history or where we get the Stations of the Cross from.
Okay.
And then as well as how do we know that Jesus fell 3 times?
Okay. The Stations of the Cross originated in the Middle Ages after the time of the Crusades, because what would happen is the Crusaders would go over to Jerusalem, and they, as a devotional exercise, would walk the Via Dolorosa, the road of sorrows that led Jesus to the cross. And Christians today still do that in Jerusalem. I've done that a couple of times when I've been over there. And so what would happen is then they'd come back from the crusade and they would be interested in sharing this devotional experience with the folks back home. And so they would make a sort of artificial or simulation of the Via Dolorosa in Jerusalem. And that led to the development of the Stations of the Cross to mark the different events that occur along the Via Dolorosa. And today, if you go to Jerusalem and you do the Via Dolorosa, they actually have the different stations there. There are little plaques, little markers to indicate the different events along the way, and then you stop and you may say a prayer and meditate a little bit on what happened at that station before you move on to the next one. So they brought this practice back, but originally there was no set number of stations. Today, and for I gather a few centuries, the number of stations and the events they commemorate has been fixed. It's been standardized. But originally that wasn't the case. So you would find different versions of the Stations of the Cross that included different events. And the idea of Jesus falling 3 times, that's not something that's in the Gospels, and so we don't know that he fell 3 times. But the human mind tends to work in triples. If something happens in a triple where there are 3 stages to it, the final stage takes on extra weight. And you see that in a lot of different fields. It's just part of human psychology. For example, in comedy, jokes are often told in triples as opposed to one-liners. So you'll have, that's why a minister, a priest, and a rabbi walk into a bar. Well, that sets you up for a triple. You're going to hear a little bit about the minister, a little bit about the rabbi, and a little bit about the priest, and whichever one is the last is the punchline. It's the one that has the extra comedic emphasis. And the same thing happens in drama. And so if Jesus is depicted falling once, that's significant. If it happens twice, it's more significant. And if it happens 3 times, it really underscores the drama of the situation. You have the same thing actually right at the end of John's Gospel, where Jesus asks Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" And John specifically notes that that Peter was pained because Jesus asked him the 3rd time. Is that 3rd time really makes it weighty. And so even though we don't know that Jesus fell 3 times, it became customary as the Stations of the Cross developed to depict Jesus falling 3 times because that adds extra dramatic weight to the depiction of his sufferings on our behalf.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. Because I had wondered if there was a tradition that started since the 1st century or so.
No, it's much later than that.
Okay.
We do know that Jesus couldn't carry his cross, which is why they had to impress Simon of Cyrene into service to carry it for him. So he had already been so traumatized that he was physically unable to carry the cross, and he would have tried and stumbled and so forth. So he did fall in that sense, but the 3-fold fall is something that's really more a part of kind of Catholic art in its depiction of his sufferings.
Darrell, thank you so much for the call. Call anytime. Right now, we continue to have a whole bunch of history materials. If you're interested in the history of the church, this is your time. Just go to shop.catholic.com because they are on sale. Dozens of great CDs, books, DVDs, all under one banner, the Deep in History sale banner. Click it, and you'll find all those deals at shop.catholic.com.
Call and ask Jimmy your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
The Church has 2,000 years of wisdom to share on what it takes to live life gracefully.
And we're so overwhelmed by how much our faith has transformed our marriage and family especially. We want everyone to experience the incredible gift that the Catholic vision of life and love really is.
More to Life with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popchak. Tomorrow morning, 10 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Catholic Answers Live, open forum. Jimmy Akin, our guest, both hours today. We go now to Catherine in Fallbrook, California, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Catherine, thanks for downloading the app. Your question for Jimmy.
Hi, guys. I'm a first-time caller, so excited to be talking to you.
Well, happy to be talking to you, Catherine.
Awesome. So my question is, I am kind of a lapsed Protestant, and I am exploring the Catholic Church. And I have come up against an intellectual hurdle regarding contraception and family planning generally. So I understand the nuts and bolts of what the church teaches. So my question isn't so much about what does the church teach as much as a follow-up to, in light of what the church teaches, is the assumption that all married people are equipped to be parents and should be striving to be parents.
No, that's not the assumption. Now, because marriage is something that is oriented towards by God's design, it's oriented towards the procreation and education of offspring. It needs to be the case that people who are getting married would be, at least minimally capable of being parents if children come into their lives, and they need to not be saying to themselves at the outset, we're going to refuse children even if God sends them. Like we're going to use contraception and so forth to exclude them, to prevent God from sending them. But it's not required that they be in a state of life where they would even be physically capable of having children. Older people who are infertile can get married as long as they're not, perpetually and incontinently and incurably impotent. They can go ahead and get married, and they can then perform the marital act, which can serve its unitive function of promoting the well-being of the spouses by bonding them together and promoting their unity as spouses. But if they're of the right age or just have some medical condition to where they're not fertile, then that's sorrowful, but it's okay. Obviously, the ideal is to get married at young enough and have kids. That's kind of this typical version of marriage that's part of God's design, but it's not required that everybody in every circumstance fit that. And so people should be open to children if they come, but they may realize that that children may not come, and they may even, based on their knowledge of their own age and medical history, conclude, okay, well, children aren't going to come here, but that doesn't mean I can't still get married and bond with someone and be one flesh with them.
Catherine, how does that strike you?
Well, maybe the word equipped was a little misleading. I think I mean, have you ever met people who you would be concerned about if they had kids?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. There are situations where there are reasons why people ought not to have kids. Some of those reasons, for example, let's suppose that the parents have a genetic background that means any children they would have horrible birth defects and would cause great suffering for the children. Well, in that situation, the parents can still bond with each other, but as long as genetic science has not cured this condition, which hopefully one day it will, but as long as it hasn't, it could be reasonable to say, okay, well, it's not a good time for us to have children. because of this, and so we're going to use natural family planning to work within God's plan to achieve the goal of not having a child right now because it's not a good time since there isn't a cure for this yet. So that would be possible. Also, there can be people who have severe psychological problems that could even that would prevent them from being parents, but if the psychological problems are severe enough, it might prevent them from getting married in the first place, validly, because if you have real severe psychological problems or cognitive problems, let's say you have someone who is severely retarded, so they have severe mental challenges that would prevent them from being able to function as a parent. Well, then they shouldn't be getting married and really couldn't get validly married anyway because if they're that mentally handicapped, they're not going to have the ability to rationally exchange consent to be married. And so, sure, there can be problems with people that would say this person should not be a parent, and sometimes it means, well, they also shouldn't get married, and sometimes it even means they're not capable of getting married.
Catherine, we'll leave it there. I hope that was helpful to you. Please call again anytime. Up next is Lisa in Toronto, Canada, watching on YouTube Live. Lisa, thank you for your call. Your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hi, Sly and Jimmy. My husband and I love you guys so much, and we watch Catholic Answers all the time. I have a weird question, and that is, as a Catholic, when someone sneezes and you say, God bless you, is that considered superstitious?
It is not. It's certainly not automatically superstitious. Now, the way this custom originated was in the past, when someone sneezes, it's a significant disruption of their bodily processes. And it also is, at times, not always, but at times it's a sign of sickness. In the past, sickness was very risky, and so it was natural to invoke God's blessings on someone who was sneezing. And that's become part of our culture and is continued down to this day. It is not, though, automatically superstitious because you can really wish God to bless someone. That's the reason the custom came to be. And if you want God to bless someone, when you say God bless you after they've sneezed, then that's not superstitious. You're sincerely hoping that God will do that. And it constitutes a form of prayer. Now, it's also a form of courtesy and so forth, but then it can be courteous to offer prayers for someone when they need them. So the two things are not in opposition. You also don't have to be thinking about you don't have to be thinking consciously on it at every particular time you say God bless you, that, oh boy, I really hope God blesses this person. You can have what moral theologians refer to as a virtual intention. A virtual intention is one where at some point in your life you've decided, whenever I do this, this is what I intend, even if you don't consciously think about that fact later. For example, when a priest says the sacramental formulae, like, this is my body or something, he may, as he says that, after saying Mass every day for 30 years, he may not always be thinking about transubstantiation is about to happen as I say this.
Yes.
But he has, in his early formation as a priest, established a virtual intention that's still there as part of his will. Even if it's subconscious, it's still there that when I say these words, that's what I mean to happen. And so because he has a virtual intention, the sacrament will still be valid even if he's being distracted by some other thought and doesn't consciously think about the transubstantiation when he does that. In the same way, if you've decided, whenever I say God bless you to someone, I want God to bless that person. I'm asking God to bless them. Then even if you don't happen to think about that every time you say God bless you, you still have a virtual intention, and God knows that, and God is capable of acting on your request for him to bless someone.
Okay, Lisa?
Thank you, and God bless you guys.
And God bless you too, Lisa. Thank you very, very much. Alex in Montana is next. Alex, your question for Jimmy.
Hi, guys. I was just wondering if you could explain the line between sinful pride and like the healthy love of self, knowing that we're cherished, knowing that we have talents, and that like being proud of our accomplishments.
I can explain it at least in general terms. The fundamental difference, because they both involve an appreciation of oneself, but the fundamental difference between healthy self-love and pride is that one is ordered, so that means it's proportionate to the truth, and the other is disordered, meaning it's not proportionate to the truth. So you're loving yourself too much in some respect, and that's when it becomes pride. That's a distinction that is real. That is the distinction between healthy self-love and pride, but it can be hard to cash out in practice because it's more of a principled distinction rather than giving one a set of tests for how do I know when I've crossed the line into loving myself too much in some respect. And so the way to kind of put some flesh on that skeleton and cash it out in terms of practice is looking at periodically examining oneself and saying, okay, I have these good qualities. God has blessed me with this situation. He's given me these qualities about myself that I like. Those are great. But am I being led by this appreciation into sin in the sense either of doing things I shouldn't, such as giving myself exceptions to moral rules that apply to everybody else? Or am I sinning by omission? For example, by thinking so much about myself that I never do anything to help other people. Or not doing what I should to help those God has put close to me, like my friends and family. So we do want to periodically examine ourselves and see, is the respect that God wants me to have for myself, is that something that under the influence of original sin, is that being distorted so that I end up sinning either by commission or by omission?
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Sure. Thanks very much for the call. Let us go next to Ryan in Washington, watching on YouTube Live. Ryan, your question for Jimmy.
Hello?
Hello, Ryan. Your question?
Hi, yes. Well, so here's the background about it. There are some friends, family friends sort of my family, and their daughter recently went to the University of Washington, or some university and around here, and she was raised in a very devout Catholic household, very devout. I mean, Mass every day,
Ryan, I hate to do this, but we are almost to the break. So what happened, and what's the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, basically, she went to the Newman Center frequently, but, when she got out of college, I think she lost her faith, and I think she became atheist. And the bottom line is here, why, I want to ask in your opinion, even though this is speculative, why do you think this happened? How did this happen, and why does this happen to, like Catholics and Christians, like in her case?
Oh, I think it'd be good to get an answer, too, because lots of people do go off to college and lose their faith.
So you want to handle that on the other side of the break?
Oh, yeah, probably. That's a good point, Jimmy Aiken. Yes. I don't know why I gave you both names right there. That's a good point,
It's okay, Cy Kellett. I answered to both of them.
Ryan, hang on through the break, and then we'll get it on the other side, because we really don't have that much time to address the question. While I got a couple seconds, though, I'll tell you where the next place that our intrepid traveler, Don Eden Goldstein, the author of Sunday Will Never Be the Same, will be. And that is tomorrow night in Capitola, California, at St. Joseph's Church, 7 p.m. And then on July 20th, she'll be in Santa Clara, California. You can find out all about where Dawn is going to be by visiting us at the Catholic Answers Facebook page and getting all the dates there.
Hi, this is Phillip Rivers, NFL quarterback, and you're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" Turns out that today, as back then, this question has a lot of different answers. So many groups want to appropriate Jesus, tweaking his identity until he looks and sounds just like one of them. But then you no longer have the Lord, says apologist Trent Horn. You have an imposter. In his new groundbreaking book, Counterfeit Christ, Trent exposes 18 phony versions of Jesus that we encounter today, helping you to recognize the fakes when you see them, explain why they're phony, and make a case for the full truth and beauty of who Jesus is, the Christ, the Son of the living God. Order your copy of Counterfeit Christ today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Hi, this is Trent Horn, and you've probably heard me explain Catholicism to non-Catholic callers on the radio or engage opponents in formal public debates. I've always hoped these interactions would show people how to graciously defend and share our faith. But they're not enough. That's why I've created a weekly podcast that will help Catholics answer the toughest objections against our faith. Every episode of the Council of Trent will provide listeners with a conversation roadmap that will help them share their faith with anyone. Keep in mind that I hate boring lectures. These podcasts will contain entertaining, informative, and practical explanations of the faith, as well as interviews with the best Catholic writers and speakers in the world today. Visit TrentHornPodcast.com today to find out how you can subscribe to my new podcast. That's TrentHornPodcast.com.
I'm Gloria Purvis.
I'm Monsignor Charles Pope.
And I'm Deacon Harold. The Morning Glory team talks about a musical that revives the Lords.
Tomorrow morning, 7 Eastern. Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live, open forum today. Jimmy Akin, our guest, and when we went to the break, we were talking to Ryan in Washington, talking about a young woman, a young acquaintance who went off to college, despite going to the Newman Center and all that, seems to have lost her faith and might even have become an atheist, and just wants kind of a speculation from you, Jimmy. Why does that happen?
First, though, I want to compliment you, Cy Kellett, though, for actually following up on the question.
Oh.
I don't know how many radio shows I hear where
they don't
the host will say, now, coming up in our next segment, I'm going to ask this, and they never ask it.
Yeah, I've done it a lot. I've done that.
So, to answer Ryan's question, obviously I don't know this woman, and so I don't know the particular circumstances of her life, much less do I know what's in her heart. But I can name several factors that could be playing a role here. First one is the garbage in, garbage out principle. If you are fed a diet of bad information from people that you are inclined to believe, such as your teachers, because that's their job is to teach you.
Right.
Then if they give you a bunch of bad information, then that can undermine your faith if it's information that contradicts your faith. So that's something that is unfortunately the case with a lot of schools today. They are not schools that are supportive of the Christian faith. In fact, in a lot of places, including in state universities and including here on the West Coast, you have a lot of universities that have an expressly anti-Christian agenda among a lot of the faculty. They may not say it, especially at fundraising time, but it's there. And so a lot of university professors, frankly, have as one of their desires the desire to undermine the religious faith of their students, and so that easily could be a factor that's at play here. Another factor is time of life situations. One of the things about the transition from adolescence to adulthood is a desire that to kind of stake out one's own identity and to exercise one's own autonomy. When people are younger, they don't have the kind of autonomy that they do as adults. And so whenever they get autonomy, like moving out of your parents' house and getting a job and things like that, and suddenly you're not under anybody's supervision anymore, you can want to say, let's take this shiny new car around the block for a drive and exercise all kinds of autonomy. And people can sometimes go too far in that respect. And that could be, a rejection of beliefs that they came up with that are of a religious nature. It could be a rejection of other things, like let's reject the moral norms I grew up with. Let's start experimenting with sex or drugs or alcohol in ways that are inappropriate. And so, this is a known phenomenon at this time of life. Even as far back as Aristotle, Aristotle said young people are reckless and like to have fun. And so...
and that was in olden times.
Yes, exactly. and so... you have the same thing happening today. It's part of the maturation process. Due to the effects of original sin, as people mature, they sometimes go too far in exercising personal autonomy and challenging the ideas that they were brought up with. Also, then there's just original sin itself. People sometimes will adopt positions not because they have good evidence for them, but because they're psychologically convenient. Like, if I don't want to have to live up to Christian sexual ethics, I might say, okay, I'm not going to be a Christian, and I'll pick something else that's culturally live, like, I could be an atheist, or, I could say I'm spiritual but not religious. And they will then adopt a position not because they have good evidence for it, but because it's convenient for them to do so. Finally, Ryan mentioned that this woman grew up in a very devout household that had Mass every day. And obviously, it's great to have a very devout household. Daily Mass is a good thing. But there are households where piety is used as a substitute for certain aspects of family life that should be there. Devout parents, just like any parents, can be overly strict about some things. And that can lead them to be insistent on their children's religious practice when the children are feeling out their own identity, when they're in that transition into adulthood that we call adolescence. And if they're too strict about it, it can alienate the child. And it can create a sense of confinement for the child that may even stoke the child's desire to get away from that and to have a different mode of life. One of the things that is a danger for parents, and this is true for parents of all stripes, but one of the things that's a danger for parents is thinking that you have to protect your offspring from every possible danger. Now, that sounds like a good thing. To just let's protect our kids from everything that could go wrong. Well, that you do need to do that when they're babies. Mm-hmm. But when they are adults, they are going to need to function on their own without your protection. And the only way to get to where you can function without someone else protecting you is to progressively take on more and more responsibility and more decision-making, even at the risk of making mistakes. And if parents don't think of their mission as, my job is to help raise someone who's going to be a functional adult, and they think instead of, I need to protect my child from every bad cultural influence, then actually they can end up setting their children up for problems because their children will not have been trained in taking risk and making decisions and interacting with the bad old non-Christian world out there until they're suddenly exposed to it all and they're left as a victim of it because they don't know how to deal with it anymore. So I would say I don't know the situation in this young woman's case, but those are some of the factors that could be involved.
Ryan, thank you very, very much for that call. I hope that was helpful to you. We go now to Katie in Idaho. Katie, you have a question for Jimmy Akin?
Hi, yes, thank you for taking my call. I do have a question. So me and my husband recently, about a year ago, came into the Catholic Church.
Congratulations.
And thank you. It's been best ever. Mm-hmm. But I have a daughter from a previous marriage, and she's 13. And so this change has been new for her. While her father is letting her go to a Protestant youth group.
Mm-hmm.
And now she wants to get baptized in the Protestant faith. And I wanted her to become Catholic,
Sure.
of everything I found out and stuff. But me telling her no, she can't get back. I know I can't force her to become Catholic because she's at the age of reason.
That's right.
But at the same time, do I say, no, you can't get baptized here until you learn the Catholic faith and then make an educated decision? Or should I? I'm worried about pushing her away from the church.
Right.
You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
she has a bad view kind of with some other family members, too, as well. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I would say a few things, and actually this is a good example of some of what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Of as young people mature, they have to be allowed to make decisions, and not necessarily decisions their parents are going to agree with or approve of. Since your daughter is beyond the age of reason, you can't just have her baptized as a Catholic. And she either is or is about to be, I'd have to check just to verify, but the age where the Catholic Church would say, no, she can make this decision, whether for herself, whether she's going to be baptized at all, or if she is going to be baptized, whether it's going to be Catholic or whether it's going to be Protestant. My inclination in a situation like this would be to say, I think it's great that you want to be baptized. Baptism is a very special, very important thing. It's how it's something Jesus commanded. It's how we become Christians. So I really want to support you in your desire to be baptized. At the same time, I want you to be as close to God as possible. I want you to have all of the graces that God would want you to have. And after a careful study of those, I've concluded that that's in the Catholic Church. And I'm not saying you have to become Catholic in the end, but I would hope that we could, that you would be willing to study this and get some experience in the Catholic Church as well. Like, for example, by going to a Catholic youth group, because, just speaking in terms of psychological realism here, young people are intensely social and care lots about their friends. It's part of the maturation process. And so if she's got a Protestant youth group that she finds really exciting and interesting, and that's where her peers are, and she wants to fit in with her peers, it's going to be psychologically natural for her to want to officially join that group, that church, so she can be fully part of that group. So knowing that that's just a fact of youth psychology, it can be reasonable to say, well, let's also get some experience in the Catholic Church with a Catholic youth group. At the same time, we study the evidence for, the different beliefs of the Catholic Church and this other church. And let's actually look at some evidence, because it shouldn't all just be determined by what's exciting and what's fun and things like that. God gave us feelings, and feelings are important, but they're not reliable. If they were, people wouldn't be led into sin by their feelings. And so we want to look also at the objective evidence that God has provided for us. And obviously, we have tons of that at Catholic.com online for free, as well as other resources that you could get and help your daughter out.
Okay, Katie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We got to take a quick break.
By the way, I want to give Katie props for, she realizes she could push her daughter away from the church by coming down too hard on this, and that's a key insight.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Parenting is so much about judgment, when and what,
Prudence.
Prudence. Yeah,
Yeah.
Make a good judgment about this, because it's not all automatic. Thanks, Katie, for the call. Hope you call again sometime. We're delighted to hear that you and your husband have come into the Catholic Church. All right, now we will take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Bringing you the truth. Catholic Answers Live.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
I went to Las Vegas years and years ago for one of these cable shows. And I was shocked to see all these old ladies in their 70s and 80s getting off that plane, running for a slot machine. You don't have a chance to win. They're all fixed. I know, my uncle used to have slot machines.
EWTN. Live truth.
Live Catholic.
Do you love praying for people? Have you ever wanted to use your gift of prayer to share Jesus with others and build up the body of Christ? Start a public prayer station with St. Paul Street Evangelization. Listen to people's needs, pray with them, or invite them to meet you at church. St. Paul Street Evangelization can help you get started. Find out how at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Open forum today, and lots of calls for Jimmy Akin, so we will just continue to work our way through them. If you would like to get on the line, well, I'll let you know. I'll tell you what, I'll let you know when there's an open line. Up next is Jerry in New Jersey. Jerry, your question for Jimmy Akin.
Thank you for taking the call.
Happy to.
Jimmy, I have a question about limbo.
Okay.
And I've heard as many things as it's a hypothetical construct. I want to see what's the binding teaching, if there's a binding teaching within the church about limbo. And for example, if a baby's in the womb and somebody was to trace the sign of the cross with a Trinitarian formula, would that constitute it? Can you baptize a baby prior to that? But I want to know what the church has taught in the past and what's the most accurate recent understanding you can give me.
Okay, so for people who may not be familiar, limbo is an idea that was proposed a number of centuries ago as a way of explaining what would happen to infants that die without baptism. Because at the time, it was understood that in order to go to heaven in the full sense of having the beatific vision of God and that supernatural destiny, that you needed to either be baptized or have an equivalent of baptism, like baptism of desire, where one consciously intends to become a Christian even though you end up dying before you can be baptized. And obviously, infants aren't in that position. And so if an infant died without baptism, they wouldn't have received the sanctifying grace in their soul needed to unite them fully with God in heaven. On the other hand, they also haven't committed any actual sins themselves. They have a broken nature because of original sin, but they don't have personal sin. And so it wouldn't be fair for God to punish them and make them suffer in the afterlife if they're innocents. And so so the idea was, well, maybe for such infants there is another destiny that they could have. Technically, you could say it's a part of hell because it's not in heaven, but it wouldn't involve suffering. And it might even involve great natural happiness, just not the full supernatural happiness of having the beatific vision of God. And so this was proposed as an idea, and it received some support of a kind of tentative nature in some church teaching documents. However, more recently, over the course of the 20th century, there was a lot of theological reflection on this concept, and the church became more aware of the fact that God offers the possibility of salvation to everybody, even if it's in a mysterious way that we can't perceive or that we don't fully understand. And so if that's true, then that would apply to infants dying without baptism. And so a lot of theologians came to be of the opinion that there could be other ways that God could provide salvation for infants, and so consequently, who die without baptism. And so consequently, the Catechism of the Catholic Church says that we may hope for their salvation. It doesn't say we know they're going to be saved because we don't know that. But it does say we can hope for that because they're in the hands of a merciful God. And subsequently, the International Theological Commission, which at the time was a body run by Joseph Ratzinger, later Pope Benedict, produced or began work on, and then Pope Benedict authorized, and under his auspices, the authorization was given for the release of a document called I think it's the Hope of Salvation for Infants Dying Without Baptism. And it's on the Vatican website. If you Google that and International Theological Commission, you'll find that document. The International Theological Commission is not itself a part of the magisterium, but it only gets to publish its its documents on the condition that the Holy See does not have a problem with them. So you can look at this document from the International Theological Commission as a document the Holy See does not have a problem with. And it concludes that even though there was some tentative magisterial support for this teaching in prior centuries, at this point, the discussion has moved on from that, and even though you can still believe in limbo, it is not required to believe in limbo, and there are other possible options for God providing salvation for these children.
Jerry, thanks very much for the call. I will tell you that this topic of limbo comes up, as do many important topics in Jimmy Akin's book, Teaching with Authority. How
True.
to cut what?
True Dat.
True Dat. All right. I thought you were renaming the book for a minute there.
No.
That would True Dat. That would be a good name for a book. Teaching with Authority is the name of the book. How to cut through doctrinal confusion and understand what the church really says. You can find it pretty much everywhere that Catholic books are sold, and you can find it at shop.catholic.com. Certainly. Let us go now to Connor in Minneapolis, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Connor, your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hey, Jimmy, I'm always glad. What was that?
You're on the air. What's your question?
Oh, hey. Yeah, sorry. So my question is about the Pentarchy.
Okay.
What is the history of the Pentarchy in the early church? And did any of them have any special charisms like the Bishop of Rome, and how are we as modern day Catholics supposed to compare those primates to the Bishop of Rome?
Okay. So for people who may not be aware, the Pentarchy is a group of 5 important sees historically that early on came to be regarded as the most prestigious sees in Christendom. They are, in order, Rome, Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. And obviously, some of them were major Christian centers. Rome was a major Christian center. Constantinople was a major Christian center, so was Alexandria and Antioch. Jerusalem, historically, was a very important Christian center, but it was also a Jewish city, and it was smaller than some of the others. But because of its foundational role in the Christian faith, it came to be included in the Pentarchy. The name comes from the Greek roots pente, which means 5, and then arche, which means beginning or rule. So these are like the 5 ruling sees.
Okay.
And obviously one of them, in the Catholic view, Rome has as its bishop the successor of Peter, which means it has a special charism in the church. The others, from a Catholic point of view, don't really have equivalent charisms. They would have the charism of ruling and governing the churches in communion with them in their broader area. They were not just influential locally in their own city, but regionally, in the whole region around them. And so they did have a charism for providing doctrinal and pastoral care for the Christians in union with them in that area. Sometimes you'll hear the Patriarch of Constantinople described as the successor of Andrew, not because Andrew ever went to Constantinople, but just because Andrew was the brother of Peter. And so since that's the second see, we can kind of analogize it to Andrew. Okay. At least that's my understanding. I'd have to do more research to be sure. Obviously, since Constantinople was not right there at the foundation of Christianity as an influential center, it only became influential when it became the imperial capital, when the Emperor Constantine moved his capital there. That's why it's called Constantinople.
It's Istanbul, not Constantinople.
That's nobody's business but the Turks.
Okay.
And there might be giants over there, system of the Pentarchy is not a divine institution. It's an institution of ecclesiastical law, as illustrated by the case of Constantinople being number 2, even though Constantinople was not a major Christian center in the first century. And so it is an institution that has been historically useful in many respects and continues to play a role and will continue to play a role in the future, but it's not one that Catholics would regard as being of divine institution.
And we will have to leave it there because I think we got so many callers. We'd like to keep moving. Connor, thank you very, very much for that. We go now to Joe in Ohio, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Joe, your question for Jimmy. Hi, Joe. Joe, do we have you there? Joe in Ohio? No.
You should have had me. Darn.
All right. Well, we're going to come back to you, Joe.
Yeah.
Joe will just hang on.
It's
I
important,
think he's on.
it's important when you're waiting on the line that you listen to your phone and not the radio because there's a delay.
Let's go to Sue in Columbus, Ohio, listening on AM 820. Sue, your question for Jimmy.
Yeah, I'd like to know about why Catholics make the sign of the cross and where did that originate?
Okay. It originates in the fact, obviously, that Jesus was crucified and that we identify with Jesus as Christians. In fact, St. Paul says that by being baptized, we were baptized into Jesus' death, which occurred on a cross. And so he even says, like, I've been crucified to the world and the world to me. So this imagery of associating us personally as Christians with Jesus' death and with the cross is something that has been there from the beginning. And it became very natural early on for Christians to use the sign of the cross, not just in external depictions of art, but even to apply it to themselves. And so certainly, I've even seen claims that began in the first century, but I know for a fact Christians were making the sign of the cross on themselves in the second century. And there's no set way of doing that. Sometimes it's made like a little bitty on your forehead with your thumb. Sometimes it's made on your forehead and your lips and your breast. Sometimes it's made more broadly, touching your forehead and your breast and both of your shoulders. Sometimes it's right to left. Sometimes it's left to right. Sometimes it's even more broad than that, involving the whole body. But it's natural for us as Christians to identify with Christ, our leader and our Savior, and to identify with his death, as St. Paul indicates, and it's a symbol of renewing our faith in Christ.
How's that?
Okay, so it's a reminder to yourself, basically. You're just kind of
it's a way
rehearsing.
It's a way of consecrating yourself to God and also asking God to bless you.
Okay.
And that's why sometimes when something really bad has happened, you'll see people crossing themselves. It's asking God to bless them, to protect them.
Right. Or you certainly see this when you're out eating. People will make the sign of the cross on themselves before they eat and that kind of thing. Jimmy Akin, I really enjoyed this hour. Could you just stay and do one more with us?
For you, Cy Kellett, absolutely.
Thank you. Since you got my They Might Be Giants reference.
Now I've got Particle Man running in my head.
Sorry. Just in case anybody doesn't know, I said it's Istanbul, not Constantinople, because that's the lyric to a song. It's not because I actually have any problem with the word Constantinople. Jimmy Akin is our guest. It's open forum. 888-31-TRUTH is our number. Lines will open up. They get pretty full when we have Jimmy here for 2 hours for open forum, but keep dialing. You'll get through, and we're happy to take your question on any aspect of the Christian life of the Catholic Church right after this.
Glad you're with us. Join us on air with your questions today on Catholic Answers Live.
Hey everyone, this is apologist Carlo Broussard, and I'm here to tell you about the most exciting and innovative Catholic book in years. As Catholics, we get endless challenges to our Catholic faith and conversations through the mass media, on the internet, and more on the infinite collection of social media platforms. There's no getting prepared to mount defense, challenges that we every day. To that end, my good friend and apologist extraordinaire, Jimmy Akin, has come up with what will surely be a go-to resource for years to come, a daily defense. A daily defense takes up a different challenge for every day of the year, 366 in all, teaching you how you can defend the faith and give answers to Catholics and skeptics alike. And it's user-friendly, with challenges and answers indexed alphabetically, by scripture verses, or by topic. So finding the answers can be quick and easy. Order your copy of A Daily Defense today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Wouldn't it be great to have a book to give to anyone to explain exactly why Catholics believe what we believe? The good news is that now there is. Why We're Catholic is the groundbreaking new resource by apologist Trent Horn. That one book you can hand to anyone as a starting point for helping them find their way into, or back to, the practice of the Catholic faith. In a series of short, easy-to-read chapters, Trent covers the whole range of common topics, starting with why we believe in anything at all, and answering all the common objections to the Catholic faith, both doctrinal and moral. Don't miss out on the most important, life-changing book to come along in years. Better yet, it's only $3 a copy when you order in bulk. Order your copies of Why We're Catholic today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
What do the Pharisees, pagan emperors, the Nazis, and the Quran all have in common? All were enemies of the faith who admitted crucial facts that undermined their own position. In his new book, Hostile Witnesses, How the Historic Enemies of the Church Prove Christianity, author Gary Machuda looks at dozens of Christianity's most notorious foes, from biblical times through the 20th century, and draws from their words and deeds surprising testimony to gospel truths. Rich in research and written with clarity and force, Hostile Witnesses is a unique contribution to Catholic apologetics, one that speaks with special urgency to a modern world in which the faith is once again under attack. If you love apologetics, you need to order your copy of Hostile Witnesses today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore in your area.
Author Mark McNeil spent years in the Oneness Pentecostal movement, praying in its lively services, zealously spreading its unconventional teachings, and rejecting mainstream Christianity as misguided. Then he left it all behind. All in the Name is the story of a man who believed he was among an elite group of believers who followed the true faith when so many others had strayed. But an inquisitive mind, careful study, and the action of the Holy Spirit finally led Mark out of Oneness Pentecostalism and into the Catholic Church. This is an inspiring conversion story you won't want to miss. It's a faith strengthener for Catholics and an intriguing challenge to those who deny the doctrine of the Trinity. Order your copy of All in the Name today by calling 1-888-291-8000, logging on to the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Hello, welcome back to Catholic Answers Live, open forum, Thursday afternoon, Comic-Con's in town. I don't know what the list of good things going on is just too long to get to all of them.
They probably have a Good Place panel down at Comic-Con.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because they haven't had in previous years.
The Good Place is a
sitcom.
A sitcom. very well done, hilarious, well-written sitcom. The only sitcom...
Not always family-friendly, but
it's not.
Surprisingly mostly family-friendly.
It's the only sitcom I have ever seen that tackled the trolley problem.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah, so maybe you want to explain the trolley problem, because it's a fascinating philosophical question.
Okay, so our first question of the hour, what is the trolley problem?
Okay, there we go.
The trolley problem is a philosophical experiment proposed by the philosopher Philippa Foot, and it's designed to help tease out our moral intuitions about certain situations. It proposes a series of similar scenarios. Kind of the base scenario is you are on a train and it is or a trolley, and it is out of control, hurtling down the tracks, and you see that there are 5 people in front of you who will be run over and die if nothing changes. But you have a lever that you can throw that will divert the trolley onto another track. And on that track, there is only one person who will die if you pull the lever. So the question is, do you take no action and allow the 5 people to die, but, so to speak, your hands are clean? Or do you pull the lever knowing it will lead to the death of one person? Now, when presented with that scenario, most people will say the thing to do is pull the lever. And it's just unfortunate that someone else is going to die, but you should save as many lives as you can. But then other scenarios start getting proposed, like suppose you're not actually on the trolley. Suppose you're on a bridge over the tracks. And so you're not on the trolley. You cannot pull a lever to make it go down that other track. But you are standing next to a really obese person who you could push onto the tracks, causing the trolley to veer onto the side track so that fewer lives are lost.
But not that...
and there may even be nobody on the second track. It's just you've got to push this one guy over to save the 5.
Right.
And would it be moral to do that? Because it looks, from one perspective, the same. You're losing one life to save 5.
Right. Yeah.
And at this point, most people's ethical intuitions flip and say, no, you cannot. You could pull a lever that diverts the trolley, but you cannot actively push a person into the trolley's path to save others.
Well, now you tell me. I mean, I wish I would have known that before.
Well, you do now.
Yeah. So you said the good place will probably have a panel down there at Comic-Con.
Yeah, because they have in previous years too.
Yeah.
And it's always fun after Comic-Con to check out YouTube for the panel discussions.
Oh, yeah, right. Open forum here. If you got questions about Comic-Con, that's fine. We'll do our best to get you an answer. But mostly the questions will have to do with the Catholic faith, Catholic teaching, Catholic people. Or as Jimmy was saying earlier, a general question about the Christian faith is perfectly welcome. Whether you're Christian or not, whether you're Catholic or not, whether you're religious or
not.
Yeah, right. Like... general questions about God are always, I find those always fascinating. So we're happy to take your call. In other words, whether you're Catholic or not, and you have a wide array of things that you can call about. 888-318-7884 is the number. 888-318-7884. Let's go to Evie in Huntington Beach, California, watching on YouTube Live. Hi, Evie in Huntington Beach. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Hi. Your question for Jimmy.
Yes. My question is it true that, or how accurate is it that the Catholic Church invented priestly celibacy to get rich? Because
well, that didn't work.
Because when someone became a priest, they would be celibate, so then all their wealth would go to the church. But then if they were going to form a family, then the wealth would go to the family. And so that's the reason why the Catholic Church invented celibacy.
No, that's not why. The reason the Catholic Church invented celibacy is for 2 reasons. Number 1, Jesus was celibate. Okay? He chose to consecrate himself to God in a special way, both because being celibate is the final state of redeemed humans. I mean, as Jesus says, we're going to be like the angels in heaven. We're not going to be marrying and giving in marriage. So in heaven, we're all going to be celibate. That is our final state. And Jesus exemplified that even in this life. also, he had a mission. And having a wife and kids would have kind of not been a great idea if you're planning on going to the cross and dying and then ascending to heaven. And so also for practical reasons, Jesus refrained from marriage. And he was not unique in that regard. There were other people in Judaism at the time who did the same thing, including St. Paul and St. Barnabas. And St. Paul recommends this to Timothy, telling them, like to be a good soldier of Christ, and like any soldier, not get entangled in civilian affairs, but seek to please the one who enlisted him. And so, so we had celibacy as a practice for religious leaders, not everyone, but for religious leaders in the Christian faith right there in the first century. And it's always been continued down to this day with varying regulations. Sometimes it's been more common, sometimes it's been less common. We've always had both celibate priests and married priests in the church. So this was not something the church invented to get rich.
Okay, and of the time where the church might have been rich, how did the church get rich during those times? Because I know now it's not.
Principally, it was through donations. Sometimes churches, and rich is a relative thing, but there have been times when local churches were well off economically given the undeveloped state of the economy. And you would sometimes have churches running enterprises that would themselves make money. Like, for example, a lot of monasteries support themselves through agriculture, and they not only raise enough food for their own members, but they may sell some of the produce to others. Or they would provide other services, like being publishers of books. You know, monks knew how to write, and so they would make books for people. And sometimes they would make these beautiful illuminated manuscripts that then rich people outside the church would want and would pay a lot of money for. So sometimes it was through providing goods and services to people. They would make money. But most of the time is through donations. Sometimes they would get donations, when someone joined a monastery, let's say, there were people who would, have inherited money and then they would donate it all when they joined a monastery. But that's not the principal way monasteries got donations. And churches, they principally got them, and especially churches, because you didn't join a church the way you join a monastery. Mm-hmm. It was principally through voluntary donations and offered by the faithful. Some of whom were rich and would give big donations, some of whom were poor and would give small donations, but it's primarily through donations, although there was some admixture of goods and services provided.
And we will leave that there. Evie, thank you very much for the call. I hope it was helpful to you. Let us go now to Chris in Ohio. Hey, you're big in Ohio today, Jimmy Akin. Chris in Ohio, your question, please.
My question is, that I heard that Pope Gregory the Great said it was a sin, or it could be a sin to eat food just to satisfy your palate. And then I heard from another website that said it could be a sin to eat between meals. And I was just wondering about that. And what would it look like just to eat to satisfy one's palate?
Okay. Well, so the first one is and I can't vouch for the claim that you heard that a particular pope said this. What I can tell you is what contemporary moral theology would say about this. With regard to the first question, it is not a sin to eat in order to have a good experience. The reason we have a good experience when we eat and when we eat certain types of food is to get us to eat them, because our bodies need nourishments. We need both macronutrients like fat, protein, and carbohydrates, but we also need micronutrients like vitamins and minerals. And so we have appetites to get us to eat, and it's pleasurable when we do eat, and that's part of the biology that God built into us to get us to eat, so that our bodies would have the fuel they need, both on the macronutrient level and the micronutrient level, to keep going and sustain life. So there's nothing wrong with saying, "Oh, that pizza sounds really good. I want a slice of pizza." There's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you eat to an extent that it causes problems, then that does potentially become sinful. Like if you want to eat lavishly, knowing that someone else who you could feed, who's right outside your door, is going to starve, like Lazarus and the rich man in the parable, then that kind of eating, could be sinful, because you could easily help Lazarus. He's right outside your door, but no, he's starving and you're stuffing yourself. Also, if you know that if I eat this and it's going to, or if I follow this eating pattern and it's going to cause me severe health problems later on, well, then you're eating in a way you shouldn't. And so there is some element of sin there. It's usually venial. It'd have to be special circumstances to make a single act of eating mortal, though I can imagine circumstances where that would be the case. But I would say if you are eating simply to please your palate without reference to these other issues, like your own health or the needs of other people, and you're just gorging yourself on fineries or whatever, then that would constitute a sinful form of eating, because you're so focused on your own pleasure to the exclusion of other important moral values. On the other hand, it's not wrong to take pleasure in eating. That's why we have pleasure when we eat. So I would say those about that. In terms of eating between meals, the Catholic Church is not going to say it's sinful to eat between meals. There's no set eating pattern that is mandated by God. It varies widely over culture. I will say, based on personal experience, that eating between meals is not necessarily a prudent thing to do much of the time, because what happens when you ingest new calories is it causes your blood sugar to go up, which causes your body to release insulin, which causes a variety of health problems when your insulin gets too high. And you do that long enough, you just snack constantly between meals, things are going to happen, like you're likely to get overweight and get diabetes and things like that. So eating all the time is not a great idea, but it's not sinful occasionally to have a snack.
Chris, thank you very, very much for the call. We are late for a break, so we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Many Protestants believe Christians can be absolutely sure they're going to heaven because John tells us in 1 John 5:13, "I write this that you may know you have eternal life." But is this true? The answer is no, and here are some reasons why. First, John writes in the next verse, and this is the confidence which we have in him. For John, the knowledge we have of our salvation is not a certainty without doubt, but a confident assurance. And that's the Catholic belief. Second, we know this is what John means because in verse 15, he draws a parallel between our knowledge of salvation and our knowledge that God grants our requests. Do we have absolute certitude that God will grant our requests? No, but we are confident he will answer. So, Catholics need not worry. John is not teaching Protestant doctrine here. I'm Carlo Broussard with the ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Prayer is an opportunity to spend quality time with God. So pray from the heart. Let God know you trust Him, believe in Him, and most of all, that you love Him. My favorite prayer that I say many times a day is, "Jesus, I trust in you." It is simple, but as we know from St. Faustina, it reaches His heart.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live, Open Forum. Jimmy Akin with us for the entire hour, and there are lots of calls, so I am just going to move and move and move. Joe in Ohio, are you there with us now, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay, Joe, your question for Jimmy.
So my question is it a moral sin to say, like, oh my God, or take God's name in vain? And my answer to another question, would it be a sin to, like...
I'm sorry, Joe, can you speak directly into the phone and not have us on speakerphone? I'm having trouble understanding you.
Yeah. So my question is it a moral sin to say, like, oh my God, or, like, also, is it like a sin to, like, not stop someone from saying, oh my God, not telling them, that is a sin?
Okay. So this falls under one of the Ten Commandments, you shall not take the Lord's name in vain. And what that originally meant is sometimes debated by biblical scholars. It is often thought to be like a prohibition on falsely swearing in court, where you would invoke the Lord's name and the Yahweh knows what I'm saying is true.
Yeah.
And you're falsely swearing that. So you're like perjuring yourself. On the other hand, it's in Hebrew, it's written in such a way that it can be broader than that, and theologically down through the ages, it's been recognized as at least having a broader application. Like the other Ten Commandments state specific cases that then have broader applications. And that's true in this case. God's name is holy, or, the sound itself is just sound. It's syllables. It's not intrinsically holy. But because it represents God, who is supremely holy, we need to treat it with reverence. And so it's holy in that sense. We need to treat these sounds in our language that way. And that means not using them in ways that would be inappropriate. In order to have an inappropriate usage, it can be tricky to discern that. There are situations where it's clearly inappropriate to use God's name a certain way, like in blasphemy. If you were to curse God, okay, that's clearly not using his name in a holy way. On the other hand, there are positive uses of his name, like in God bless you, when you say it and you mean it. Then there are kind of middle cases, which could be neutral or are otherwise hard to decide, is this really good or is this really bad? In those cases, it would seem that the matter is sufficiently ambiguous that a person is not going to have the kind of knowledge needed in order to make it a mortal sin. And similarly, humans have a certain inbuilt instincts that have linguistic expression. The impulse to curse. Now, oh my God is not a curse. It's an expression of surprise or amazement. You hear something that's amazing. Someone might say, oh my God.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you are enraged at something, if your rage circuit is triggered, then you may have an inclination to invoke God's name and say, God damn this, or some variation on that, and mean it.
Yeah.
Now, and originally people did. That's actually, and it's fascinating, people have a tendency to substitute words for even worse words, as euphemisms.
Yeah.
And you can actually tell, linguists have done a lot of research on the history of cussing. And it turns out that the F word in expressions like F you is actually a euphemism for what was in the past considered a much more horrible thing you could say to someone.
Really?
Damn you.
Oh.
That was considered even worse than F you.
Well, it is, yeah.
And if you mean
damn
it literally,
is the worst
it
thing
is.
that you can do.
Yeah. So if you say things, as with any other sin, if you got grave matter, you're seriously wishing damnation on someone, and you don't care, you don't want them to repent, you just want them damned, and the moral character of your act is gravely wrong, and you do it deliberately anyway, well, then it would be a mortal sin. And but the vast majority of the time, people are doing this by instinct, because as I said, these circuits, like the rage circuit, is built into our brain, and they take on whatever cultural form we hear around us.
Right.
And so most of the time people are doing it, frequently they're doing it without even thinking. So and also without considering the moral character of the act. And so it doesn't either have the requisite level of knowledge or the requisite level of deliberation to make it a mortal sin. And so at most of the time it's going to be venial.
Yeah.
And that then sheds light on the second question: do you have an obligation to stop people from doing it? Well, if I knew that someone was about to say damn you to someone else and mean it literally, they don't want repentance, they want you in hell, and they know the moral character of this and they are going to do it anyway, well, they've already sinned in their heart, like Jesus said. But I might have some obligation, or at least a desire, to stop them and say, you need to think about this.
Yeah.
You stop, you know.
Like you might do for any sin. Like you might
for any sin. If I saw someone about to commit adultery.
Right. Like even if the person had already decided, you still want to stop them from.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. On the other hand, if the people around me aren't the cleanest talkers and they do thoughtlessly, unintentionally use words like this, then what they're doing is a venial sin, and it's then a judgment call of, will I lead them closer to God or farther, or will I push them farther away from God if I try to correct their language? Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm a parent, I might insist for my kids, language, you know?
Yes.
We don't talk that way in this house.
Or if you're Captain America.
Or if I'm Captain America.
He will not tolerate foul language.
Exactly. And he shouldn't. But if I'm, around office workers or people I know socially, and they're saying little things like this in a venially sinful way, I might do something to indicate, a little bit of displeasure there, but I'm not going to drop the hammer on that and read him the riot act, because that would have a tendency in most cases to actually make them view me, and to the extent they take the faith seriously, other Christians as a bunch of snobbish prudes who look down on them, and that's going to push them farther away from God, not lead them to him.
Joe in Ohio, I'm glad we were able to get in contact with you eventually. Appreciate it. Thank you for the call. It is open forum. And as I said, there are many, many folks on the line, so we're just going to keep moving. Howard in Boston, Massachusetts, listening on the EWTN app. You are next. Howard, your question for Jimmy.
Hi. I'm been divorced a number of years, and I just received my annulment.
Congratulations.
I'm wondering how I would proceed in dating someone when I'm not certain that I wouldn't be impotent.
Okay.
That wouldn't be a valid marriage if I was, and being chaste, I have no way of finding out if I'm impotent.
Yeah.
So, I'd like your thoughts on that, whether or not I should even pursue dating, and number two, how would I have a discussion about a woman about this without sounding like I wanted a prenup?
Okay, so here's what I would recommend. The first thing is, in order for impotence to invalidate a marriage, it's not just impotence. It's not just having difficulty having sex or only being able to do it periodically. In order for it to invalidate, it has to be antecedent, meaning it's already there at the time of the marriage. It has to be perpetual, meaning you never actually can do it. And it has to be incurable. And today, that last condition is almost never fulfilled, because not only do we have drugs like Viagra that can help, we also have medical devices, penile implants, that can also help. So almost nobody today has antecedent, perpetual, and incurable impotence. And therefore, unless you've had given those facts, I would say proceed on the assumption that you are not antecedently, perpetually, and incurably impotent. And I would say, unless you have strong reasons in your past of, wow, this was really hard and we didn't have the technology to fix it at the time, unless there's something like that in your past, I would say that I don't know that it even requires a conversation. If you're of a certain age, it can be reasonable to say, we might have some difficulties in this area, but I love you, or assuming you're at the point where it'd be reasonable to have that conversation, you should be in love. Say, I love you, and I'm determined to work through this in whatever way if issues like this do come up.
Howard, thank you very, very much for that call. I appreciate it. It's the second day in a row we had a Viagra mentioned. We never talk about Viagra.
Really?
No, we had
know
it
that.
2 days in a row. Yeah. There are lots of folks on the line. Stay on that line because we are not going to go away for very long. We will be right back to take your calls. One line, maybe two lines open right now, 888-318-7884. Right back with more Open Forum on Catholic Answers Live.
Looking for an on-fire Catholic speaker for your event? Catholic Answers speakers will inform and inspire your audience to grow in their Catholic faith. For more information on booking a Catholic Answers speaker, visit CatholicAnswersSpeakers.com today.
In his new audio presentation, The Very First Fathers, apologist Jimmy Akin takes you on a tour of the earliest Christian writings outside the New Testament. From the most famous figures and most notable works to those lesser known but no less important, this pivotal time in the development of the early church is revealed in fascinating detail. Jimmy shows how, even in the first century after the resurrection, it was necessary to defend and explain truths that are still under attack today, such as the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist and the perpetual virginity of Mary. The Very First Fathers is a compelling look at the dawn of the Christian age and edifying listening for anyone who wants to understand and defend the full truth of Catholicism. Order your copy of The Very First Fathers today by calling 1-888-291-8000, logging on to the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Love and beauty. As a little girl, Dawn Eden Goldstein knew that she wanted those things, that in them somehow she would find God. Over the years as a rock journalist, she moved among some of popular music's best-known artists, straining to capture that transcendent love and beauty in every note and lyric. In Sunday Will Never Be the Same, Dawn recounts her spiritual journey in beautifully wrought detail, mixing powerful accounts of trauma, healing, and epiphany with funny anecdotes from inside the music scene. It is the rare conversion story that delights as it inspires, amuses as it edifies, and ultimately lays before the reader a lived testimony to the transforming grace of Christ. Order your copy of Sunday Will Never Be the Same by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
I'm Gloria Purvis.
I'm Monsignor Charles Pope.
And I'm Deacon Harold. The Morning Glory team talks about a musical that revives the Lords.
Tomorrow morning, 7 Eastern. Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back. Open Forum. Jimmy Akin, our guest. Jimmy is senior apologist here at Catholic Answers and also the author of many things, including two recent 20 Answers books, 20 Answers Protestantism and 20 Answers New Testament. You can find both of those and pretty much maybe everything else you've published at shop.catholic.com. I don't know. Is that all
everything.
there? Not everything?
Everything I publish through Catholic Answers that's in print
is there.
But
all right.
not things that are not in print or that I haven't published through Catholic Answers.
Like, no, you don't have to tell me. You don't have to tell me. It might be top secret.
Civil Rights Breakthrough, for example.
You wrote that?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So if you go online, and specifically you go to Amazon and you type in Civil Rights Breakthrough Jimmy Akin, you will find something I wrote. It's a short story.
Now I can't wait for this show to be over. Mary, in Maryland, you are up next. Your question for Jimmy, Mary.
Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I recently was with a bunch of older ladies.
Mm-hmm.
We're all retired.
Mm-hmm.
And the discussions, these are Catholic women, were raised Catholic, went to Catholic grade school, high school, and they believe that Jesus, and they say there's evidence that Jesus is married with children to Mary Magdalene, and that she was also very high above the apostles, that Jesus appointed her to that. and that she is in this position because she was the first to see him after the resurrection. Now, how does one respond to something like that?
It's a bunch of nonsense. Now, obviously, you don't want to necessarily tell them that as the first thing you say, but this is not believed by any New Testament scholars of reputation anywhere in the world, whether they are Catholic or Protestant or atheist.
Sounds like the plot of a novel, actually.
Well, I was going to say, this is an idea that got popularized a few years ago in a novel called The Da Vinci Code, and before that, in a kind of paranoid medieval conspiracy novel called Holy Blood, Holy Grail, which is where the Da Vinci Code got it from.
Okay.
This is not something that is supported by early Christian documents. You will have some attempts to support it from, for example, the Gnostic Gospel of Mary. But the Gnostic Gospel of Mary actually doesn't say any of this. It doesn't say that Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene or that they had children or things like that. So you have a lot of misuse of the Gnostic Gospel of Mary, and it's not a reliable gospel. It dates from, over 100 years after the time of Jesus, and it is not regarded as having actual valuable historical traditions about the life of Jesus by scholars of any persuasion. You will have scholars say it tells us something about Gnosticism and what later Gnostics believed, but it does not tell us about the life of Jesus. If you look at the New Testament, it's very clear that Jesus was celibate, and there are several reasons supporting that. There are several indications of that. Not only is there no mention of a wife, but we would expect one, because who's going to take care of her after Jesus dies? I mean, he does have a mom, and he arranged for his mom to be taken care of after he died.
But not the wife.
Not the wife. Then, number two, if you look in the Synoptic Gospels, Jesus talks about the question of celibacy. He says some men are born eunuchs, some men are made eunuchs by other men, and some are eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom. And the apostles come to Jesus in this context and talk to him about, well, if certain things are true, it'd be better not to marry. And he says this isn't for everyone, but those who can accept it should accept it. And so he recommends celibacy for the sake of the kingdom. And he obviously is the pinnacle of Christian spirituality. It would be totally bizarre and contrary to the spirit of the gospel writers for them to record Jesus holding up an ideal that they knew he himself did not meet. So if they show him holding up celibacy for the kingdom as an ideal, that means they regarded him as meeting that condition. So the gospel writers regarded Jesus as celibate. Also, in the New Testament, it wasn't just the gospel writers, it was also St. Paul. Because and others as well, but in Paul's letters and in the book of Revelation and so forth, you have the church depicted metaphorically as Jesus' wife. Well, that metaphor would never have arisen if Jesus had a literal human wife.
That would be creepy.
People would never have thought about the church as the bride of Christ if there was a Mrs. Jesus somewhere, any more than there would be a mystical bride of Cy Kellett if there's a real Missy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So there are multiple lines of evidence that indicate this is just fantasy land.
Does that put your mind a little more at ease, Mary?
Yes, yes. They also say there's a book, a Gospel of Mary Magdalene.
Yeah, that's another name for the Gnostic Gospel of Mary, but as I said, it is a later document. It is not from the 1st century, and it is not regarded by historical scholars as containing accurate historical traditions. It also does not say a bunch of the things that this narrative wants to say about Jesus, like he and Mary Magdalene had children. That's totally not in there.
Great. Thank you.
All right, Mary, thank you very much for the call. 888-318-7884, the number. We go now to Sebastian in Sweden, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Hello from Sweden, Sebastian. You have a question for Jimmy?
Yes, I would like to ask about the two different resurrections in Revelation chapter 20.
Okay, so they've been understood differently by different groups of interpreters. One group of interpreters who are frequently found among premillennialists, they're people who believe that there's going to be a future earthly reign of Christ on the earth before the end of the world. Premillennialists will look at this passage and say, okay, the first resurrection is an event that's still in our future at the beginning of the millennium, where when Jesus returns at the second coming, dead Christians and only dead Christians are going to be raised from the dead. The rest of the dead don't participate in the first resurrection. That's something that occurs after the millennium at the very end of the world. So that's the common premillennial understanding. Everybody but premillennialists, and this would include the position of the Catholic Church, at least in broad terms, looks at the passage and says the first resurrection, it could mean a number of things, but it's most plausibly understood as the resurrection, well, either the resurrection to spiritual life we receive as Christians in this life, that there's a kind of spiritual, talks about how we were dead in trespasses and sin, but now we're made alive with Jesus Christ and so forth, and we're baptized into his life, so we walk in new life, and we're regenerated and born again, and that's that new life we receive, that's the first resurrection, which is what gives us power over hell. If you have the first resurrection, you don't, unless you sin mortally, you aren't going to go to hell. On the other hand, it could be a resurrection to spiritual life that occurs for the blessed upon their death. So you die in this life, and then you are raised to be with God, and that's the resurrection. That's the raising to spiritual life in heaven. That's what the word resurrect means, is to raise. Okay. And so you're being raised to spiritual life with God in heaven. And that's why you don't go to hell if you have a part in the first resurrection. So there are different understandings. The Catholic Church doesn't have a particular one as what the first resurrection is, but that is, but it does not teach premillennialism. So it's not going to agree that the first resurrection is a physical event before an earthly millennium. On the other hand, everyone pretty much agrees the second resurrection, whatever else is true, second resurrection is a bodily event that really will occur at the end of the world.
Sebastian, is that helpful to you?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very, very much. It's always exciting to get a call from Sweden. We better take a break. We'll be right back with more Jimmy Akin, Open Forum on Catholic Answers Live.
Your questions, Catholic Answers Live.
St. John Paul II stated that, for the disciple of Christ, evangelization is a duty, an obligation of love. And the Catechism of the Catholic Church states that evangelization is necessary for salvation.
So we know we're called, but how do we do it?
St. Paul Street Evangelization can help. To learn more, contact us at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
When you are predictable in your authority, you will actually have to use that authority less. Consistent discipline leads to less constant discipline. The more you act when you need to act, the less you will have to act in the future with similar misbehavior.
The Doctor is in with Dr. Ray Garendi. This afternoon, 1 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
We love history around here. That's why we're having a Deep in History sale at shop.catholic.com. Dozens of great CDs, books, DVDs, all on sale. Go to the shop at shop.catholic.com and click on the Deep in History banner and check out all the deals. Special pricing ends Sunday. Jimmy Akin is our guest these 2 hours, but most importantly, for the next 20 minutes. If you missed the stuff before, here's Emma in Hayden, Idaho, listening to EWTN online. Emma, your question for Jimmy.
Hi, Cy. Howdy.
Hi. That's nice. Hi, Cy. Howdy, Jimmy.
Music.
What's that?
You'll know groovy music. You'll know groovy music.
I know. Nick needs to trot out the groovy
hurting
music.
my heart.
Yeah.
That's kind of hurting my heart now that you said it, Nick. What's up with the? He's got a new baby at home, so let's just give Nick a break.
Yeah.
He's got a brand new baby at home. So
how can we help you, Emma?
Okay, so I'm a Protestant.
Mm-hmm.
I've been listening to Catholic radio for a few years now.
Must have been if you know about the groovy music.
Well, yeah, there you are.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in transubstantiation,
Uh-huh.
but I am really struggling with Mary,
Mm-hmm.
and I've asked the Holy Spirit to intercede for me, and I still haven't got anything confirmed. But how can she be everywhere if she's answering prayers all over the world? I mean, every second of the day she must be being prayed to. How can she attend the prayers? Does she have Mother Teresa helping her or something like that?
Well, so there are a number of possibilities here. Now, first thing, Mary is not omnipresent. She is not everywhere the way God is. But God is omnipresent, and God is also omniscient. God knows everything, and so God knows all of our prayers. And the common opinion among theologians is that the way the saints know about our prayers in heaven is God tells them. So if you're praying and asking a particular saint for their intercession, God will nudge the saint and say, hey, this person would like your prayers, and then you can pray for them. So it's not that they know this on their own. That's at least the common understanding of the mechanism of how they learn about our prayers. It's God himself. In terms of the other question, which is sort of the bandwidth question, how could Mary pray for everybody who would like her intercession? Well, you mentioned one way. She could have a prayer team working under her. She could farm them out to other people. I don't know that that's what happens. That's not what the Catholic Church teaches, but it's a possibility. Also, you can always pray for any number of people all at once as long as it's in a general manner. I mean, I do that all the time. I'll pray for everyone in the world who would like my prayers, or everyone in the world who needs my prayers, whether they would like them or not. And sometimes I'll just pray for everybody. And so you can always pray for everybody in a general way because God knows you would like blessings for everybody. You could also say, I'd like to pray, just like one of the petitions I mentioned, God, please help everybody who would like my prayers. And in the same, that's essentially what Mary could say in a general way, just everyone who would like my prayers, please give them help. So that's another way that Mary could do it. But suppose a couple other things happen. Suppose Mary not only prays in a general way and doesn't just have a prayer team working for her in heaven. What if she personally attends to each and every prayer? How could that happen? Well, it's something we in this life can't do, but she's not in this life. She's in heaven. She's in a glorified condition. And that means a couple things. Number one, we're going to have a significant upgrade, according to most theologians, in our processing power in the afterlife. We're going to know more. We're going to be able to process way more information. We're going to know all kinds of mysteries we don't know in this life. We're going to have a serious upgrade to our intellects. Maybe Mary's upgrade is big enough she can handle all that data all at once. Also, here's the second reason. We don't know how time works in the afterlife. It may be just like it is here, but it may not be just like it is here. And as a result, we shouldn't look at people in heaven and assume that time works the same way for them. It works for us. It might just be a big Jeremy Baramy, and you could hang out in the dot of the I and just sit there and have all the time you need to answer all the prayers for the people who would like you to pray for them. And so we don't know the answer here, but we have faith that one way or another, Mary is happy to pray for us. We don't know the exact mechanics of it, but we can see how it's possible for her to answer our prayers our prayer requests in these different ways.
Okay, Emma?
As I said before, I love it when you're smart, Jimmy.
Thank
well,
you so
love
much.
him all the time then.
Not always. I've done some dumb stuff.
Can I guess? No, I won't guess.
Not on the air.
888-318-7884, the number. I'm going right back to calls, but I just, in case you happen to be in Capitola, California tonight or tomorrow, you're going to be in Santa Clara, California, or in Los Angeles the night after, or San Diego the night after. Dawn Eden Goldstein, the author of Sunday Will Never Be the Same, a rock and roll journalist opens her ears to God, she'll be hitting those places on her tour as it brings itself to a conclusion. And you won't be sorry that you went to see Dawn. Just a wonderful speaker in person, and she knows all the old rock and rollers, and she's lived the life, so to speak, and she came into the Catholic Church, and it's wonderful to hear her share her story. So I encourage you to go to our Facebook page and find out where Dawn is going to be and get over there. Again, it is open forum here on Catholic Answers Live. Up next is Bob in Michigan, listening on 990 AM. Bob, your question for Jimmy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Bob.
Okay. My question is, as I read the Bible and read the explanation of certain verses in the index of the Bible, it refers to verses coming from a source called M or Q. Can you explain what that is or who that is?
Yeah, so these are hypothetical sources that have been proposed by biblical scholars. Q is taken from, it's short for the German word Quelle, which just means source. And it's a hypothetical source that was used by Matthew and Luke. The reason people propose Q is because there's a little more than 200, it's about 235 verses in Matthew and in Luke that are not in Mark that are extremely similar to each other. In fact, sometimes they use exactly the same wording. And so because these 230-something verses are so similar, some scholars have proposed that they must come from a common source, and that source is then called Q. The idea, according to the most common understanding, is that Mark originally wrote his gospel, and someone we don't know wrote Q, and then Matthew and Luke came along and took some material from Mark and some material from Q, but they didn't both take exactly the same material. In addition, they had their own special sources. So Luke has stuff that's not in any of the other Gospels, and Matthew has stuff that's not in any of the other Gospels. It's unique to him. And that material, in German it's known as the Sondergut material, it's also sometimes called like Matthew's special source or Luke's special source. And sometimes you'll see the letter M used for Matthew's special source. Also, you'll sometimes see the letter M used for the Gospel of Mark. And so it really depends on what the people who wrote the notes in your Bible, how they're using these abbreviations. I would assume they've got an explanation of it in there somewhere. Important thing to recognize, these are just scholarly speculations. We don't really know that there were such sources. In fact, I personally am kind of doubtful there was a Q. I think it's more likely that Mark wrote first, Luke added to Mark, and then Matthew came along and liked 235 of the verses in Luke and used them in his own gospel. So he got it straight from Luke. You don't need to postulate an extra Q source.
Now, Bob, does that help you?
Yeah. Yeah, I tried to find an explanation somewhere in my Bible, but I haven't been able to find it, so I'm not sure where it's located. So I appreciate this explanation.
No problem.
And good for you for digging into that Bible. Who's up next? Up next is Peter in Ohio. Peter, your question for Jimmy.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Got a follow-up question, Jimmy, in regards to your last hour where you were talking about limbo and what happens with kids who have not been baptized. I have personally gone through this with a couple of my grandkids where they passed away in utero. So one of them was 4 months along, one was 5 months along. I know because I have 3 grandkids that my son and his wife would have baptized the kids, and so there's that baptism of desire. What is Now, what's the theology or what has been discussed in regards to that baptism of desire, that these kids would have been baptized had they been born?
Yeah. So this is a kind of a proxy baptism of desire, and it is something that some have speculated on as a possible way that God could provide salvation for these infants, so that if the parents would have baptized the children, that counts as a proxy baptism of desire and can bring the child salvation that way. Also, people have speculated about the church's desire to baptize them, in which case it might not just be particular children, it might be all children, because the church wants the salvation of everybody. These are matters, though, of speculation, and so we don't know the answer, but they are two of the possibilities. It is possible that God may count the desire of the baptism, the desire of the parents for the child's salvation as a baptism of desire.
Okay.
Okay, sounds wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. 888-310. Oh, I don't know why I'm getting out the number. We're about to conclude here. Let's go to Ginger. You are up next, Ginger. Your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hi. How do you like to present the case for Catholicism to Protestants? And what do you do when you do present the case? Like maybe you even mention like the Bible canon, how we got the Bible.
Yeah.
But they will still say all you need is Jesus and the Bible.
Well, it's a big question, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to give a general answer because of our time limitation. But I will point out that, there are problems with sola scriptura. I'll also point out the case for the papacy. And I did a number of years ago a presentation actually at a Protestant seminary on this, and I wrote up the results in a document called Why Be Catholic? An Exercise for Evangelicals. And it's on my website, jimmyakin.com. So if you type in Why Be Catholic, you just use the Google machine, as Cy says, and type in Jimmy Akin, Why Be Catholic, and especially if you add An Exercise for Evangelicals, that paper will come up and you can read it in all its detail. Also, I have a new book coming out called The Bible is a Catholic Book, and I go into some of this there. Also, because your Protestant friends are going to have lots of specific questions and objections, I'd recommend my book, A Daily Defense, which gives more than 300 answers to different challenges to the Catholic faith.
Okay, Ginger?
Okay. Thank you.
You are very welcome. So when's the book coming out? I forgot.
September 15th is the official release date.
September 15th, The Bible is the Catholic Book.
Mm-hmm.
And in there, you're going to do history of how the Bible came to be?
Yep.
And
it interacts with Protestant questions about the canon and things like that.
Yeah, so if a Protestant, it's not the worst thing in the world to say you need the Bible and you need Jesus. Clearly, that's true, but her suggestion was, she wants to talk about, where did you get the Bible? And is that where
that's where part of it comes in, yes.
Yeah. So we got the Bible because
of the Catholic Church, so it's a Catholic book.
Okay. What's the earliest part of it?
Of the Bible?
No, of the New Testament.
Of the New Testament, it is often thought to be either 1 Thessalonians or Galatians or the letter of James. They were all written no later than about AD 50, and some of them may have been written a little bit earlier than that, possibly as early as AD 48.
And your best, I know you've told me this before, but is it the year 30 or the year 33 that Jesus likely died?
Those are the two plausible candidates. The one that is the best supported is 33, which is also the traditional date, though that's not why it's the best supported. It's not just tradition. There's other factors pointing at it.
But what I'm getting at is that's basically 17 years between the death of Jesus and they start writing the New Testament.
Yeah.
Well, Jimmy, I really had a good time. Thank you very much for that.
Me too.
What's the topic tomorrow for Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World?
The Bilderberg Group. Are they sinister conspiracy, or do you believe their story that they're just a bunch of rich fat cats having a party in the woods?
That's sounds like us here at Catholic Answers. Rich cat. I can't even say it.
No. No.
No, I guess probably no part of that describes us.
That's right. Yeah.
Again, Jimmy, thank you very, very much. If you haven't checked it out, check out Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. New one out tomorrow. And we got Carlo and Trent coming in tomorrow. We're going to do the church in the news, various topics as we have a panel discussion. You're welcome to call and join in. We'll see you then, God willing, on Catholic Answers Live.